Books and Magazine 001. The books and Tokyo bookstores that shaped me. 1. Prologue. For Books and Magazines 1, I've written about 3 of the books that have shaped me and my outlook on life. First is a coming-of-age tale I read as a teenager that taught me that life is both a tragedy and a comedy. Second is a labyrinthine novel I got lost in during my college years. Third is a modern Japanese classic that sucked me into the world of Japanese literature. 2. The World According to Garp by John Irving. The novel The World According to Garp was written by John Irving, one of the most recognized authors of contemporary American literature. The story is funny and at the same time tragic, absorbing and simultaneously detached, and above all else, epic. It's a sprawling chronicle of the life of an ambitious writer. The 1982 film adaptation likewise has a long running time. Traditionally, the novel, having evolved into the primary form of popular entertainment in the 19th century, was enjoyable because of the time investment involved. Recent Japanese novels, however, have become the domain of tawdry characters and tired parlor tricks. Disappointing reads are a dime a dozen. There are exceptions. Take Murakami Haruki, for instance, who incidentally translated John Irving's Setting Free the Bears into Japanese. I would say that Murakami Haruki's hard-boiled wonderland in the End of the World is a wildly enjoyable romp, precisely because of the length of the journey. Footnote: John Irving is one of the masters of 20th century American literature. His work is of a grand scale, combining tragedy and comedy, with protagonists at the whim of fate. His themes include sex, sexuality, violence, abortion, and other issues of contemporary American society. His writing process involves starting with an ending and working backwards. A number of his works have been adapted into films, and he won an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay for 1999's The Cider House Rules. Murakami Haruki is a Japanese novelist and translator. He opened a jazz cafe while studying at Waseda University, which he continued to run as he made his debut as a writer. His 1987 novel Norwegian Wood became a massive bestseller and made him a household name in Japan. He also has a passionate international following and has won numerous international literary awards. As a translator, he has mostly translated 20th century American classics into Japanese. Footnote: Setting Free the Bears. This is John Irving's debut novel, published in 1968. It is a coming-of-age tale inspired by Irving's time studying in Vienna between 1963 and 64. It was translated into Japanese in 1986 by Murakami Haruki. Footnote: Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World. This is Murakami's 4th novel. It is comprised of 2 parallel narratives. The End of the World is a fairy tale-like fantasy, while Hard-Boiled Wonderland is a sci-fi adventure. 3. Gravity's Rainbow by Thomas Pynchon. Thomas Pynchon is one of the American authors I got into while I was at UCLA. Gravity's Rainbow is his magnum opus and perhaps one of the most significant works of contemporary American literature. Through the dense narrative and world-spanning vision, Pynchon is pushing the boundaries of what a novel can be. And this is the kind of ambition that inspires comparisons to Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov. The book left a profound impression on me. KAZOOs often appear in Pynchon's stories as a satirical tool, as a way to mock pretension. Maybe that's part of why I find his work captivating. Footnote: Thomas Pynchon is considered one of the most important novelists of 20th century American literature. Known for rarely making public appearances, his work is obtuse and combines far-ranging elements, including sci-fi, pop culture, and history. Footnote: Fyodor Dostoevsky is regarded as one of the greatest Russian novelists and thinkers of the second half of the 19th century. Through works set against the backdrop of latter 19th century Russian society, he explores the mysteries and contradictions of human psychology. He left a lasting impact on 20th century fiction. Footnote: The Brothers Karamazov. This is Dostoevsky's last novel, often considered his greatest masterpiece. On the surface, it is a mystery centered on the death of the patriarch of the Karamazov family, but it is also a philosophical novel that gets at the heart of the human condition, tackling themes like God and faith, free will, morality, and the relationship between father and child, and among brothers. 4. Woman in the Dunes by Abe Kobo. Abe Kobo's The Women in the Dunes is without a doubt one of the most significant works in modern Japanese literature. E. Dale Saunders' English translation is likewise one of the most prominent translations of Japanese literature available. Saunders' translation is masterful in the way it depicts the book's very Japanese worldview in English terms. It was actually this translation that inspired me to choose translating as a profession. The film adaptation, directed by Teshigahara Hiroshi and featuring a script adapted by Abe Kobo himself, is also a truly haunting piece of cinema. The DVD is a little hard to come by these days, but if you ever get the opportunity, I recommend it wholeheartedly. Footnote: Abe Kobo is a Japanese novelist, playwright, and stage director who shined a light on the uneasiness of modern society and urban life through a surrealist, avant-garde lens. His work is highly regarded internationally, and he was seen as a potential candidate for the Nobel Prize in Literature, but passed away in 1993. The Nobel Prize candidates must be alive at the time of nomination. 5. Bookstores in Tokyo. One of the perks of living in Tokyo is that there is no shortage of brick-and-mortar bookstores. When I was growing up, bookstores in America were either large commercial chains with no personality, or smaller sellers that left a lot to be desired in terms of the depth, breadth, and selection of books they carried. Most shelves were lined with crime thrillers, romance paperbacks, or lowbrow magazines printed shoddily on flimsy paper. And the larger chains increasingly felt sparse and lifeless. They couldn't hold a candle to Japanese bookstores, although I do hear that the indie bookstore scene is currently thriving. While that is made up for by the fact that the country's college libraries are quite impressive, the fact remains that Japan is a publishing powerhouse. My understanding is that this can be attributed to the resale price maintenance system, which has its detractors. All of this gives you a sense of why the Amazon Kindle and ebooks in general are so popular in the US. I prefer my own books in printed format rather than electronic, so I visit bookstores often, and rather than buy the small, portable bunkobon, A6 format paperbacks that I would submit are national treasures, I try to buy hardcover whenever I can. For foreign books, I go to Books Kinokuniya Tokyo in the Takashimaya Times Square South Building in Shinjuku. When I'm looking for technical books in Japanese or Shinsho, another national treasure of a publishing format unique to Japan, slightly larger than bunkobon, I go to Book First in Shinjuku or the Junkudo on the 7th floor of Tokyo Department Main Store in Shibuya. For photo books and magazines, I like to go to Aoyama Book Center, as well as Tsutaya in Daikanyama. 6. Recently, it feels like Tsutaya has become more of a cafe or purveyor of home appliances or tea card specialty store than a bookstore. The name Tsutaya is said to come from a famous publishing house that produced ukiyo-e woodblock prints of works from some of the best-known artists of the Edo period, such as Utamaro and Sharaku. However, Big Brother says that it comes from the name of the okiya, a kind of boarding house for geisha, run by the grandfather of Tsutaya founder Masuda Muneaki. In light of this fact, it seems oddly fitting that Tea Site in Daikanyama and Tsutaya in Roppongi are famous Tokyo Nampa spots, pickup spots, on par with Corridor Gai and Ginza. When Big Brother was in grade school, he lived near Kagurazaka. Although the neighborhood has now become popular for its fashionable shopping and dining, at the time it was home to many discreet, black-fenced ryote, high-class traditional Japanese restaurant, catering to politicians and the like. And naturally, there were many okiya in the area as well. He recalls that it was the kind of charming place where you could hear the sound of shamisen, a 3-string traditional instrument, accompaniment for dance practice, echoing throughout the alleyways even in midday. Side note, Big Brother had his first love when he was in grade school, a demure young woman at one such okiya. Books and Magazine 001. The books and Tokyo bookstores that shaped me. www.digtokyo.jp